Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Nice to be with you all. I bet the weather's different here to where you are. We've got quite a lot of snow at the moment, so that's exciting. So if we have any problems with the internet, we'll blame the weather, shall we? So good to be here with you all. And today we're looking at revision tips and techniques, some of the resources that are available. I wish I was out there with you all. It seems a long time since I was out in the Caribbean, but hopefully all being well, we'll be together again soon, but we'll make the most of this webinar and I hope you enjoy it as much as I know I will. So good afternoon to everyone that are now nicely saying good afternoon. If you have any questions or comments, please post them. It's not quite the same as being in a room together, so I do actually appreciate your feedback and your comments. I can only make progress and get better if you give me some feedback and tell me how I'm doing, how the job's going. So good afternoon and let's get going. So we want to look at and reflect on the importance of good revision. I actually feel very strongly about revision, and so I'm going to pass on some of the resources from Macmillan and some of my own resources, and we'll look at some strategies, some tips. So why we're doing revision, ways to do revision, and let's get creative and revise. So let's be kind to one another and welcome back to the first webinar of 2021. Well, it's actually the second one because I did one earlier on for the Caribbean, but this is the first webinar that we've delivered today. So that's great. So I hope it's one of many. We're looking at Let's Pass because this is a new resource from Macmillan, and it is a resource that's designed for the CPEA examinations and assessments. But I want you to be clear that I'm only using these because they're available and they're new and they've got a lot of resources in them that we can use. But I'm not saying this webinar is just for people who are teaching children, who are working towards this examination. That's not the case. I'm just using some of the resources because they're available. So, if we were together now in a room, I would ask you all to spend a couple of minutes reflecting about revision and your revision. Now, I know you can revise because you're highly qualified people. So you've taken a lot of exams. So your revision strategies must work for you. And that's one of the strong points and threads that I want to come across from this session today. But I would ask you, who taught you to revise? I run workshops for students. So a school will invite me in and I might have 100, 200 students or just a class of 30, 35. And we'll look at revision strategies. We might work on the content. Sometimes it's in a specific subject. Sometimes it's cross-curricular and there are students who are preparing to revise for lots of different examinations in different subject areas. I'm also invited in often to work with teachers, educators, and ministries where we look at revision techniques and strategies and we develop things that will work for them. And I always say, who taught you to revise? Recently, I was working for the government in this country, in the UK, and I asked a session, quite a large session, of teachers, who taught you to revise? And this is the expression I usually get. Or people say, no one taught me. This particular day, one sunny afternoon before the terrible events of COVID, a young man put his hand up and I thought, sure I know you from somewhere, but I'm not sure where I know you from. You know what it's like in our job, in our profession, we meet lots of people we can't always remember. I always think, is it a student that I've taught? Is it a parent of a student? Is it a parent of a student who I've taught? Is it someone I've worked with? Is it a teacher? And this person put his hand up quite gingerly. And I said, oh, who taught you to revise? And he said, you did, miss. You taught me to revise. And I said, oh, wow. Thinking that makes me feel very old because you're a grown-up person. And he said, you taught me to revise. You also taught me to fall in love with physics. and that's done me a lot of favours. And he said, "Can I speak to you after this session?" I said, "Yes, I'd love to." And he said, after the session, he said, "I went on and I studied higher qualifications in pure physics. I went to Oxford University, which is a celebrated university, as you know, and I studied for a degree in pure physics, and I also studied for a master's. I was in line to do a PhD, but I decided something made me think about it, and I decided to put something back because I wanted people to have the opportunities that I've had. And so I've taken 4 years out to teach children from areas not very well off, not very financially fluent areas, because I want them to have an opportunity like I did. And then I'll go back and do my PhD, and I have a job in China, and they're holding the job open. As a teacher, that was one of the best moments of my career, to actually hear the progress that someone had made. He said I taught him to revise his way, and he remembered that way, and he used it over and over again and was clearly very successful. Why did that happen? Well, not because I'm some kind of a genius. It was simply because I'm very interested in review and reflection. And I think it's very important in education as a whole, but also in life. And I taught my students because I did a master's in teaching and learning, and I learned the value. I also researched the value of reviewing and reflecting. And so, what is revision? So, I've studied revision because I'm interested in it, and I've passed the strategies on to students who've developed them themselves. So, what is revision? Revision is a revisit. Often I observe teachers teaching revision lessons and revision classes. Often I'm involved in revision sessions with students from various different schools around the world. And I realised quite early on that they are not revising, they are not revisiting, they are learning. When it gets to the point that you're starting your revision program, you shouldn't be relearning. You should have learned everything. Teachers tell me, "Whoa, I've finished the course, I've finished the curriculum. This will give us lots of time to revisit, lots of time to revise." And I always think to myself, and sometimes I ask the question, have you taught it and finished early? Or have the students learnt it and finished early? And often, most times than not, they've taught it, but the students haven't learnt it. And so we don't want to revisit, we want quality, first time learning and then revisiting. And we want the revisiting, we want the revision to start early so that students can get the benefit of it. But they have to have learnt it first. So learning is the key point to revision. And then we start the revision process, which I'll talk to you about in a minute. During that process, we want students to be able to order the knowledge, to almost be able to put it into sections, to flow in a nice journey through the curriculum, through their learning journey, to compartmentalize it so that leads to that, leads to that. During this process, we can also check understanding, and we can cement the gaps. We can make a firm foundation. We can build on that. We can fill the gaps in knowledge. We can't reteach it and we can't relearn it, but we can fill the gaps in, and we can consolidate information. We can bring it down. And that's a good point to show you something. So I always teach my students to make good notes. And that note taking is one of the key strategies in revision. Because what I learned early on as a teacher was that students thought that making notes was actually just copying reams and reams and reams of information. And so I developed a strategy where I gave students little tiny pieces of paper. And I would say, that's all you've got. Make notes on. Recently, a student said that they didn't understand machines. They didn't understand simple machines. They just couldn't grasp it. So they couldn't remember it because they didn't really understand it. And so I said, okay, try this one. So I gave them some post-it notes, but you can use little pieces of paper or cards or, just cut up paper. It doesn't have to be anything special, scrap paper. And I said, okay, what can't you remember? Well, miss, when I'm talking about levers, I don't remember the fulcrum. Fulcrum's weird. It doesn't mean anything to me. I can't remember it. So I said, okay, draw a very simple message to yourself on this piece of paper about levers. So they did. What's the next problem? Pulleys. Pulleys don't make any sense to me. I've never used a pulley. Are you sure? Have you not used it in science? Oh, yeah, I might have done. And so they then went on and they made a very simple diagram, but it was labelled with the key parts, the force and the load. The next thing they said they couldn't understand and remember as a result was the formula. And so they worked out the formula for moments and did it as a triangle. I then stuck all the pieces of paper together and I said, what you need to do is you've made a little flicker book there. So keep it in your bag, keep it in your pocket, and when you're bored, I don't know if you can see that, it's difficult to show you, but you just flick through like that and you're almost learning subconsciously because you're constantly looking at it. As human beings, we learn from and by example. We learn through habit. So the more they flick through this and look at it, the more they'll remember it. It's almost like subconscious learning. I also get students to, if they're finding something particularly difficult and they just cannot remember it, they cannot revisit it, and they can't remember it. And I'll say, just one at a time. Okay, stick that somewhere where you are going to look on a regular basis, which for young adults is usually a mirror. A mirror or on the surface of their smartphone. And every day, check themselves by covering it up, writing it out, checking it. Yes, I've got it. Do it again. Yes, I've really understood this. And then move on to something different. So that's just one of my silly little cheap techniques that actually works. When we're coming to a point where the revision timetable starts, now this can't be at the end. Students need to learn the techniques and the strategies that work for them in revision early on. So we don't just leave it till it's 2 or 3 weeks before the exam. I've worked in some schools and some facilities where students are encouraged. They might be learning a topic at the time. They could be learning on this PowerPoint slide. They could be learning about life sciences. And then they'll be given a question about Earth and space. And they'll have to look back and look at the notes and look through the learning information and review it. I was told students can't do that because it confuses them. Yeah, they can. They can do it because they learn in different subjects and different things all of the time. And so they're very able to do it. The point about this slide is it's really important that the students understand from an early time what the exam looks like and what the expectation is, because preparation is key. So from the start of the course, what does your exam look like? You are going to sit this exam with this exam board. What does it look like? This one has got 50 multiple choice questions. What do 50 multiple choice questions look like? It's got to be completed in 1 hour and 15 minutes. What is it likely to cover? Well, it's likely to cover this unit, and this unit, this topic, and this topic. The point is that you need to be well informed and you need to inform your students exactly what their exam looks like. So I'm looking at CPEA here, but that's just because that's what I'm working on at the moment. But you need to know your exam board, and so do the students. The Let's Pass resources are good for CPEA examinations because they can be used independently. And at the times that we're working in at the moment, that's important because we've had a lot of time where we've been learning remotely and we haven't had that face-to-face support from a teacher necessarily, or not as often as they might normally have. And so the Let's Pass resources for all the different subjects that they have been designed for, science, mathematics, language, and human and social, they are designed to be worked with independently, just by the student, by groups of students, by students working with a partner, a revision buddy, a learning buddy, with teachers and or parents and carers from home. There are keynotes on all of the pages about the CPEA content, and the point of this is the importance of knowing and fully understanding the expectations from the exam board for whatever examination they're preparing for. It supports the course books that are used in school, and so they match very nicely. There are how did I do pages, and these are really important because students need to measure their progress. All people involved in the students' education, all investors need to understand the progress and to track and moderate that progress. Teachers, carers, examiners, we all need to know that. And so there are pages that measure the progress as they go along, and there are also 3 mock exams. I don't like assessments, but at the moment, how else do we measure the progress that a student makes? And so for the moment, this is what we use. And so we have to make the best of it and we have to support the students in the best way that we can. The mock exams are really important because from an early age, we can give the students cut out or copied individual questions. Why? Because if we give them a big exam paper at the start of the course, it might actually stress students and it might worry students. That's not what we're in it for. That won't support students in reflecting and reviewing on their knowledge. Giving them an individual question shows them that this actually is taken from an exam paper. This is actually what individual questions will look like. This is the typeset. This is how much space they take up. This is how big they are, how small they are, how they fill in the answers. Do they use a pencil? Do they use a pen? Is it a special pen? Do they have to colour the whole circle in? Do they circle the answer? Do they put a cross in it? You can see the variance. And so they're important because each time they see them, they become more acceptable, more everyday. They're no longer a worry. When we first started in my school using multi-choice exam papers, the students had to colour in a little square in pencil. We just assumed that the teachers had taught students to use the multi-choice answer strip. When we got the exam results back, we were horrified that some students had done really badly. And when we actually analysed the exam papers when we came back, we realised that a lot of them didn't know how to fill in the answers and they'd actually circled or ticked the correct answer. But because they were marked by a machine, by a computer, they'd not got a mark for those questions. And we realised, and I learned something very important. It's not only about revising content, it's also training and reviewing how to answer an exam paper, how to answer an examination question. Revision. Do it now. Don't leave it till the end. Don't wait until the exam season, even if they're not preparing for a proper exam. Even if they've not got an exam for 2 years, go through the process of revision. Let them find out what works for them, like my student did. He was bombarded with so many different strategies and techniques, and he chose what worked for him, and it didn't let him down. If we were together now, I would say to you, how did you revise? What did you do to be the successful person that you are now? What strategies did you use? And I hear some fantastic strategies and techniques. And then I share mine because I'm not bothered if you laugh at me or you think I'm odd. It doesn't matter. The point is, we need a strategy that works for us. My strategy was I would start out with all my notes and I would buy a pen, just an ordinary throwaway pen. And I would consolidate my notes into one A4 piece of paper using the pen. I would then look at those notes and I would consolidate them further into half a page. I would make mind maps. I would make keyword lists. I would write words and definitions until eventually I would consolidate them onto revision cards. Here's one of my revision cards. Don't know if you can see that. That one's a revision card about some chemistry, a chemistry unit. There'll be all sorts of fascinating things in here. Oh, it seems to be all chemistry. I taught my son, or he watched me revising for something quite late on, and he was actually at school and he really loved that technique and he's developed it as well. So there are his revision notes from his degree. You can see the messy handwriting. He then went on and highlighted. So he's actually consolidated even further. He's consolidated it onto one card and then he's consolidated it further by highlighting specific words and things for him. You can puncture a hole in the corner and thread one of those keyring metal loops through, or elastic or string, and that means that you can read it, flick it over and read the next one, flick it over and read the next one. So you're actually working through a whole unit. But again, this can be kept in your pocket or in your bag. So we'll go back to the PowerPoint. So we need to make an exam timetable or schedule, a revision plan, a plan to pass revision plan. Often I look at these and I say to students, are you sure you wrote that plan? Has your teacher helped you with that plan? Yes. So you're really going to revise 4 hours every Saturday, 4 hours every Sunday, and 2 hours every single day after school? Yes. And you're going to do that for 7 months? Is that doable? Are you never going out with your friends? Are you never playing football, soccer, or basketball? Yeah. What happens if you're off unwell? What happens if you go on holiday? Oh, yeah. Help the students to make it realistic. Otherwise, this plan to pass becomes planning to fail. Because most students, once they don't tick off that section on that day, gone, finished. When realistically, we want it to be fluid. We want them to know that they can go back and change it. Oh, well, I didn't do that. I need a bit more time on that. Ooh, so an electronic copy is a really good one. This is a concept map, and I find these really useful as a teacher because you can see from a distance straight away all the topics and all the content that needs to be covered in order to plan for this exam. Students are very good at making concept maps also, but if they're using it for a revision, so it's almost like a tick off, make sure you check it and double check it, because if something's missed and they use this set in stone for their revision, they could miss a whole chunk of a topic or a whole topic, and then they've missed a lot of opportunities for marks in an exam. So work with them on their concept maps, but don't forget, make them personal. Just because one student can do 2 hours on a Tuesday and 4 hours on a Saturday doesn't mean all of them can. So make the revision plan personal and make these concept maps personal as well. Some students work better from imagery, so they might want to draw pictures or stick diagrams onto their concept map, and that's fine. Whereas other students, like me, like to write it. It's got to be written, they've got to write it. So even if you develop a concept map, they might want to copy it out in their way. So again, encourage them to be personal. Let them know this is mine. I own this. This is helping me pass my exams because that's my future. It's not done to them by you, it's done by them. There are lots of different revision resources. I like these because this gives a little bit of information and then there's a question or there's something to do. There's something to actually actively be engaged. It's also got a top tip. Top tips are great. Students seem to like top tips because they're short and snappy, but they're very meaningful. I always say to students and teachers that if you don't use it, you lose it. I know this with my dad. My dad suddenly can't use his smartphone, yet he's been texting me for years. I work abroad a lot, so he often texts me. And I'm like, why, Dad? Why can you not text anymore when you could text before? Because I don't need my phone. I'm at home all the time. I'm retired. That just proves if you don't use a skill or knowledge, you lose it. So just giving a student reams and reams and reams of information doesn't actually help them to use that information. And so they don't retain it quite as well. An example of that kind of thing would be this. So this is like information typed out on that sheet that the students need to know. They look at something like that and that's a lot of information. So what I did with that, I made it into a game. And so now they've got bits of information that they have to match up to other bits of information. So they're actively engaged and using it. Some students really like the idea of being engaged, of doing something, of not just thinking and writing, but actually joining things together, asking each other questions, making quizzes for one another, and quizzing each other, asking all the students to write. You write one question and one answer about the unit that we've just covered, and then have a team quiz where you select questions or you select students to read out the question, and the students collect points for how many questions they get right, and there's a winner. We all like a competition. We all like to win. So make it engaging, exciting. Practice questions have their place. They do. They are practice, build confidence, they build security. The more times they see that, the more times they have a go, the more secure they are. When they walk into that exam, they know what they will be faced with and they know how to deal with it. So they do have the place. But what do you do with these practice questions? So many students said to me, "Oh, how did you do in that exam?" "Oh, I got 4%." "And what does that mean?" "I don't know." "And what are you going to do about that?" "I don't know." It's what are we going to do? We're going to make those questions work. Which bit didn't you get right? Which bit did you find a challenge? Let's revise that bit. If I was with you now, I would carry out a survey. And I will tell you that according to current research, where they've worked with students and asked them before an exam and after an exam how well they thought they'd done. So after the exam, when they're walking out the exam room, it was recorded. How well do you think you've done in that exam? And then when they were given their exam results or the exam results were analysed by the teacher, would you say that they underinflated, overinflated, or didn't really engage in the task at all? Most of us as teachers think that they're overinflated or underinflated. We've got an idea when we look at our students. The actual research shows that a student will walk out of that exam room and go, yes, I've got 90%, I've done really well, don't need to revise. And actually, they've not done as well as they thought they had. We're all under a lot of pressure in schools. Teaching will always be a busy job. There will never be enough hours in the day, ever. But marking these assessments and getting the marks back to the students quickly is really valuable and really important. Because if they think they've just sat a mock exam or some exam questions on a particular topic, they thought it went really well and they've done fantastic, will they revise it? No. And so that's a learning opportunity gone. If they get the results back as quickly as possible, then they know that they need to revise or not revise. They've got evidence. Keep the students upbeat. It doesn't matter. You haven't covered that properly. We've got time to put this right. We've got time to fill in the gaps. You did really, really well. Can you remember what you were like when you first started, when you first came to this subject area? Can you remember you didn't do very well in that first assessment? Look what you've got now. You've made progress. This is not the end of the course. This is a mock exam. Can you see how powerful that can be to keep students upbeat, to build that confidence, to get them ready, to support them? Not, oh, I've done really badly. Yes, you have done really badly. I know we don't do that as teachers, but there's a way of keeping it upbeat and being encouraging and supporting. And there are ways of giving them the grade and being supportive, but not quite as upbeat. And I don't think students respond to that too well. Let's remember, they're under a lot of pressure. We're under a lot of pressure, but so are they. In the social studies, I like the way that immediately you've got it divided up into the topic areas. So you know exactly what the exam board will be examining on. It's related to both syllabi. You've got the topics there for revision, which supports students in making their revision schedule, their revision plan. They know which parts they've studied already, which parts they need to revise. Remind students if you're revising early on, as I talked about earlier, where you might just be on topic number 2 and you might be learning topic number 2 and yet still revising topic number 1. You might teach this in a completely different order. So it's really important that you keep asking the students, have you purchased any resources? What resources are you using? We're not encouraging people to use resources. We're not saying you've got to use resources because, not everyone can. It's not available to everyone. But if they have, you need to know because they might be using a revision resource that's got topics that are not actually taught for the exam board that you're working towards. It might be taught in a completely different order. So a student might open it and it says, you will be studying this during the spring term. And they think, oh my gosh, I've not learned that. I'm going to fail. This is a disaster. Well, no, they might not have been taught it yet because you might teach that in the autumn term. And so you need to be aware of what resources they've got and help and remind the students that it's okay. They've got time. So these resources and all resources should tell the students very clearly what they need to know and so therefore what they need to revise. They need to be provided with practice tests, practice resources that will actually prepare them for the final assessment. They need to know how they're doing. So we need some kind of strategy to assess their progress as they go so that they know truly, so they're not overinflating their grades. They know what they need to learn, revisit, and to practice. Okay? Sometimes I'll be working with students when they come to my revision seminars and they think they're ready, and I know exactly the specialism of the teacher that's taught them, because they'll be really, really good in some areas, and then it's almost as if I'll just bury it in the sand other areas. And when I address this with teachers, they're not aware of it at all. They're not aware that they focus on what they're good at. And children and students pick up on this. And so actually they focus on what they like. They focus on what they like, which is usually what they're good at. We don't really need to focus on those areas. We need to focus on the areas that are a challenge, the areas that they're not making the grade. And so they need to work harder on these areas, not bury their head in the sand, not ignore them. When we're talking about sample questions, can we please try, and it's not always possible, especially if it's a new exam board that you're using or it's a new exam, it's different from what's been done in the past maybe, but if you're using exam questions, can you please make sure that you use the exam marking schemes if you can, because we also need to train the students to be able to answer the questions in the way that the exam board want them answering. To train students to do this, we need to consistently use exam questions that are very similar to the questions that are used by the exam board where they'll sit their final assessment. In the early stages, it doesn't matter how the questions are used, it's the familiarity, the confidence with the exam question that's important. So you could give out exam questions to pairs of students. Students learn more from each other than they ever will do from us because they're more comfortable and they're relaxed. And it's okay to say, I can't read that word. I don't know what that word means. This exam question says that you are not allowed to speak in an exam, yet the question says discuss. How can I discuss it without speaking? They probably wouldn't put their hand up and ask a whole class that question, but they might ask the partner. Does it matter if they come up with an answer to the question together? No, it doesn't. Let them read the question, decide what the question is really asking. What does it want from me? What's it looking for? And then verbalise an answer. That's fine. To do that, they're using scientific or they're using the correct vocabulary to answer the question. Then get them to read a question with the partner, if that still works. But this time they could go away and they could write an independent answer to that question. Can you see how we're going through a progress, a learning journey? Eventually, then give them a question, ask them to read it quietly, as they'll be expected to read it in an exam, and to answer it looking at how many marks it's worth or looking at what it's really looking for. What are the multi-choice answers? What are the options? Which one best fits the question? And get them to do that independently. Then repeat that all again. Give them another question, read it in silence, answer it quietly, but this time give them a time frame so they've got a time pressure in order to read the question and answer the question. Encourage students to then look for words that are in capitals. Choose the most suitable word. So they're encouraged to look for keywords. Choose the best means that there's more than one option. Describe, look for the best description. Suggest, work out what's the correct answer. What do you think the correct answer is? So using keywords and being confident in using them and what they mean is a great idea. Maybe students could keep a reflective journal or some kind of a bibliography or something where they can, not a bibliography, that's the wrong word, but some kind of list of words with a definition. And these don't have to be just content driven words, these can also be skills words, like these that are used in exams, and they can reflect back on that and look back on that, and so that becomes quite valuable. They become very competent using these words. A lot of the exams now are multi-choice questions, and we're expecting the children to be able to make predictions, to be able to read through the question and decide which is the most appropriate. It could be using a process of elimination, so ruling out. Read the question and choose the best option. Eliminate any answers that are just don't make any sense to them. They're probably not going to be the right answer. And if they've still got more than one option, eliminate the one that's probably not the right one. They're fairly sure that's not the right answer, but we're not 100%. The most important thing is they don't leave any blanks. They answer everything, because every answer is potentially a mark, which could potentially give them the grade. So we want students to evaluate then. Give them the exam paper back. Give them the actual marked paper back from these mocks, and let them look at areas that the content knowledge is probably lacking or needs more effort. And that then should feed into the revision plan. So they're then making the revision time very effective, because they're working on areas that are challenging, that they know that they've not done the best that they possibly could in their assessment. In mathematics, we do the same thing. We're looking at the key points. We're looking at the content of the curriculum. We're actually decompartmentalizing it into different sections of content so that it's doable. So we're not looking at a massive big overview. We're looking at fairy steps, tiny doable chunks. We've also got the how did I do again. Top tips. So how did I do? What does it actually mean? Well, less than 40% in most exams, and it's definitely this type of exam, less than 40% means we need to put more effort in. We need more revision, and maybe we need some input from someone else, like the teacher. 41 to 80%, we're doing really well, but there's always room for improvement. Some students will come out of an exam and go, yes, I did really well. And they'll get the paper back, told you I did really well. And that's it. I don't need to revise. I've done really well. Yeah, but that mock exam or that test you've just taken could have been on 2 units, and you've got 8 units in your final exam. So don't allow them to become complacent. Over 80%, they need to really analyse that result, and they need to look at the areas that they found more challenging, because those are the areas that might take it to the higher grade. They need to work with the key words: which, what, how, discuss, predict. There's only one correct answer in mathematics, and so some students find that very comforting. There's no grey areas, there's no wishy-washiness. Encourage students to really study the diagrams and the graphs. They've got time before they actually read the question. So they're almost preempting, predicting what the question will be based on the graph. Thank you. Someone's just said glossary. Thank you. Yes, glossary would work rather than what I said. I appreciate that input. Thanks very much. So yeah, get them to keep a glossary of words that might be used in the exam paper, not just the content words. Thanks for that. We had some experience with some exams early on where we thought the children were ready and well prepared. And one of the questions, all of them did quite badly. And it was one of those questions that was quite straightforward. I think it was a speed time graph, if memory serves. And we thought they'd be really good at that because they'd done it in maths, they'd done it in science, and we thought they'd be okay. And lots of the children had not done very well on it. When we actually got the exam papers back from the exam board, we looked at it. The graph was at the bottom of the right-hand piece of paper of the booklet. It was a booklet type. The students had gone, what's that? Turned the page over, looked at the questions. What is this talking about? What does this mean? And either completely ignored the questions because it just didn't make sense, or they just guessed and put anything down. We soon learned that we had to tell the students, you need to read the papers. Don't fold the booklet back on itself because you will probably miss key information. Keep it open and read everything. And if you read a question at the top of the page and it doesn't make sense, turn the page back and look at the bottom of the previous page. That's a really good tip. I've also seen some students working from the back of an exam paper because they think that the marks get more marks as you go to the back of the paper. That's all good and well, but make sure they read the final exam question, not backwards up to the exam question, because again, they'll miss key information. Impossible answers, ignore them, just ignore them. And practice, practice, practice. It's all about P's. Practice, plan, and prepare. They are the key things. What to expect? Again, make sure they understand what the answer paper will look like and how they need to answer it. And again, practice. Practice for them. Now, I said all along that I want children to make this personal. Before I go on to that slide, I just want to show you some things that I've used with some of my students, just to show you that it's not all about the resources that are just on the PowerPoint. So this is a revision checklist, which is pretty much like the one I showed you on the slide, but just to show you how effective it is, where students can tick off how well they think they are prepared. And then you could check that with an exam question, and they could then feed that into their revision plan. So going back to the actual exam, I digressed a little bit there, just to keep you awake really and make sure you were listening to me still. Timing is key. Okay, and again, if we were together in a room now, I would say to you all, okay then, the exam paper is 1.5 hours. How long is 1.5 hours? As teachers, we're quite good because we work in little time frames, don't we? We're like machines. We work from the start of the lesson to the end of the lesson. And as we become more experienced, we rarely even look at a clock. We just know that the end of the lesson's arrived. We're very good at it. Students find timing quite difficult. An hour and a half is an absolute eternity if it's in a lesson. An hour and a half playing soccer or netball or basketball, that's okay. That doesn't seem too bad. So you can see that the conception of time, really, and the perception of time is not very reliable. And it certainly becomes that way when we're looking at questions. So, how long have you actually got to answer a question? I'm giving you 1 hour and you've got 10 questions. So, how many minutes can you actually spend on each question? When they work it out, then say to them, so how long is 6 minutes? How long is 6 minutes? Get them to close their eyes and ask them to put their hand up when they think that 1 minute has gone. And you will be, if you've not already done this, astounded. Because it will go from literally seconds. Yes, a minute's gone. And then there'll be someone sat there well after the minute's up and they're still waiting for that minute. And so we realise that actually saying to them, you've got 1 minute, is meaningless. If you've ever been in an exam, and again, I've carried out research on this, and students tell me when you shout 30 minutes, they stop and think 30 minutes, how long is 30 minutes? What time is it? Where's the clock? Oh, it's 2 o'clock. Okay, so I've got 30 minutes, that's half past. They've just wasted 5 minutes thinking about you telling them how long they've got. You've got 2 minutes left, you've got 5 minutes left. Has no impact at all, no positive impact, but it does have a negative impact. Because if you say to a student who's got 3 questions left, 5 minutes, if it's a multi choice, It might only take 30 seconds to answer a question, so they've got more than enough time. But what do? They panic. Oh no, I'll just put anything down. And then they sit there for 3 minutes waiting for the end of the exam. So make them aware of how long time is, how much time they've actually got, but don't put them under time pressure because it has no positive impact at all. And remind them over and over and over. Don't leave it blank. A student once came out of an exam and I said, "Did you leave any blanks?" "Yeah." "Why?" I didn't answer question 6. "Why? You know answer to that. Tell me what the answer is." "Oh, miss, it's da 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 da." "Yeah, that's correct. Why didn't you write that down? Why did you not tick that box? Why did you not colour that section in?" Because I wasn't sure and I was a bit embarrassed. Embarrassed? Why were you embarrassed? Because people might look at me and laugh at me. The person who was marking the paper might laugh at me. We don't even see your paper. The paper goes off to the exam board. "Yeah, no, but they might see my name on the paper and then they'll laugh at me." No, doesn't work like that. I worked for an exam board. I used to get question 6 for 300 students. I didn't know the name. I didn't know who they were. I just saw that question and I marked that question and I sent it back. And that's the way it happens in lots of exam boards. So they need reassurance. We haven't got time to look for your name, even if your name was on there. And we don't really care who you are. We just want you to do well. So answer every single question, even if you're not sure. So, top tips: read the question carefully. Some of the important words are actually in capital letters. Look for the keywords. Look for the words that will help you to answer the question. Choose the best means more than one option. Describe. Look for the best option. Suggest. Work out the correct answer. This is across the board. This is not just for one subject. This is for all subjects and nearly all exams. I'm using different exams to you. I work with different exam boards, but they're all virtually the same. Also, check the number of question. Keep asking them to check the number of the question that they're answering against the number on the answer strip or against the number on the answer booklet. Too many times we see students, "Oh, I don't know that one." So they leave it blank, they read the next question and they fill the answer in on the wrong question number. So they remind them to keep checking and double checking that they're actually putting their answer against the correct question. Top tips: allow the students to have a fluid plan. Things change. We can't always plan for things that we don't know about. COVID springs to mind. We can't plan for that. If it's an electronic revision plan, it can be shared electronically with the teacher and with other people, with a study buddy or with a revision partner. So, and it can be adapted and changed. So, I have revised that really quickly. I've answered a couple of questions on it and I'm very confident about that. I don't need to spend another 2 hours on it, but I could do with spending more time on that. And so they can move things around and share it. That's the important thing. They can share it. They might fall behind, they might need longer. So make the plan that fits their personal schedule. The revision techniques are personal to them, and the schedule or the plan is personal to them. I'll show you another revision tool that I use. This, I don't know if you can see that very clearly. So that's actually about energy. This is just something I picked up in my revision. I actually have got a revision box on the floor next to me just now, and that's got all the different units that would be used for energy. And it's just a nice little reminder. I go into some classrooms and these are in a beautiful display along the classroom walls. That's not what they were made for. That's not why we made them. Why we made them was to shock the students. There's today, yeah, and I have taken it off the wall. There's blue tack on the back. This is today's challenge for you. Let's have a look at forces and the different equations and formula that you need to know for it. Let's have a look at speed and acceleration and waves, the speed of a wave, electricity. Okay, so change them, make them changing all the time. Some students will love these, and if they do, give them photocopies of them, give them copies, let them copy them and colour them in. They might like it because they're colourful. Some students might not like that at all. Some students prefer something more like that, that's meaningful and makes sense, and there's nothing silly on it. I also like this. This is taken from a PowerPoint. So this is, it spins round really quickly and it stops in a certain place, and the students have to use it to answer questions or give me five. They have to give me 5 points about the unit that we're learning about. And that's not at the beginning, not at the end. It's just in a shocking moment to keep them on their feet. So they might be doing an exam paper and we'll spin the wheel and it stops on a name that's chosen at random, and it might be hot seating. Okay, what's the answer to question 3? What that does is, it is exciting, it keeps children on their toes, and it also breaks up the monotony of exam question, exam question, exam question, because exam questions are only useful if the outcome is used to inform planning. There's just another one about English. That one's a nice one because it's got arrows that show the progression and the flow through a topic and a unit. And again, some students prefer that. Be happy is the key thing. Come on, we're coming to the end of a course. It means that it's a start in a new step, a new section of their life and of yours. You're moving on to other students. They're coming to the end of the course with you. It's a great time. They want to walk into that exam confident. The result of being prepared is confidence. We want them to walk into that exam room. I've got this. I can do this. I've done everything I can. I'm fully prepared and I'm going to pass this exam and I'm going to get the best result that I possibly can. So, preparation, be prepared, plan, that will result in confidence. And a confident student is a powerful student, because some of our students have got a lot of knowledge. The only thing that's stopping them, confidence. Know that they can do it. Okay, I really enjoyed that. That's gone so quickly. I cannot believe that that's an hour, but it is. I wish I could be with you, and one day I hope I am soon, and we can all be together in one of those rooms out there in the Caribbean, working away together as a team. But for the moment, this is the best that we can do, as I said. If you've got any questions at all, I'd be more than happy to try to answer them. I'll be more than happy to share anything that I've got. If you've got any questions at all, please type them out there and I'll try and answer them now. And here are all the contact details that you might need. So I guess it's thank you and goodbye from me, and over to Raina to close up this presentation. So thank you so much. I hope you've got as much from that as I have. Someone's just put, before Raina comes back, someone has just put, how would you assess a student who answers a question correctly but the number is wrong? If it's in revision, I would say, yes, the content, that is correct, your answer's correct, but how does the examiner know that? So you need then to spend more time practicing the actual exam technique rather than the content. I hope that helps. Sorry, Raina, someone just asked a very important question.
No problem. Just waiting to see if there's any other questions. Perfect.
Some nice comments.
Always nice comments for Debbie. We love Debbie's presentation. And it's always nice when we've got attendees being very engaging and always providing feedback. It helps our team and also helps with the delivery as well. So thank you so much, Debbie, as always, for fantastic sessions. And thank you so much to the attendees for joining. This is our first webinar of the year, so do join our upcoming webinars that you will find on our website. So we look forward to seeing you soon. Take care, stay safe, and we will hopefully see you soon. Bye.
Bye.